What is going on, everyone? This is Aiden Wood, mix and mastering here, and today I'm here to talk about a part two, a follow-up to our last video about how to find space in our mix. And so last video we looked at looking for space within the frequency spectrum, seeing if things clash, how to look to sort of blend them in between each other, make sure things aren't clashing too hard. So looking in the frequency spectrum like we did in the last video is one way to do it. Now the other way to do it is to look at things within the stereo field. Now within the stereo field we have a bit of a spectrum here. So we have everything coming in mono, so we can just say that's coming right up the middle. Then we have our sides, so we have our left side and we have our right side. And so similar to how we were looking at the frequency spectrum, where we're looking for kind of gaps and places to put things so that they don't interfere with one another, we can look at doing this with our stereo field as well. So let's say, for example, I want to have my kick right up the middle. This is a pretty typical thing within house music because you really want to make sure the kick is punching through on all systems, including mono systems. So let's say our kick is right up the middle. Something else we would want up the middle would be our bass line. And now we're not going to necessarily move the stereo field of our kick and our bass, but something we're going to do is we're going to want to make them work together. We're going to use something like Kickstart. We're going to use a sidechain tool to make sure those things work together. And so when we have things that are in the same stereo field together, you want to use tools to make sure they work together. Now, another thing, let's say we're looking at our synths and we have one synth that we really like, it's coming right up the middle, it's really punching through. And let's say we have another synth that's in the background that we want to be a part of that, but it's clashing with our main synth, it doesn't sound right. Something we can do is look at the stereo field. So if, let's say our synth was coming right up the middle here, if we had another backing synth, maybe we could throw it over to the left side, or we could throw it to the right side. And that way, the frequency spectrum, it might be similar, but in the stereo field, it's going to be spaced out. And that's what's going to give us and the listener the ability to hear and understand the differences between things to give us a very clear and understandable mix. So I have a little visual here just of what some of these things do tend to look like. Again, it's not necessary to use this as like a fundamental guide, but parts of this, as we can see here, are very helpful. So we see our kick and our bass are right up the middle. We want to make sure those are really punching through. Our lead vocal, we want to keep that pretty mono. We'll want, things like reverb and delay, obviously, to add a little bit of stereo difference, but we'll want the main part of our vocal to be punching right up the middle. But then we look a little bit further left and right, and we can see how things are spaced so that they can make sense in our mix. So maybe you have a piano in there. You want to keep it a little bit to the sides so that your kick, your bass, your snare, your vocal have room to breathe. Maybe your guitar, some of our percussive elements, maybe it's a shaker that you have in your house song. You can give that a little bit of space so that it's not interfering with everything else. Even your hi-hats and stuff. So usually what I like to do is I like to have one hi-hat right at the middle, and then I'll pan another one left or right, maybe a second one left or right, and that'll really fill out the hi-hats. Same with the claps. I'll have a snare coming right up the middle, and then I'll have a wider clap, which gives the drums a bit of space too. And we definitely look at these for things like our synths, our effects, our vocals too. So it's really important to think about how our mix makes sense in the frequency spectrum, like I mentioned earlier, but also how they make sense in the stereo field itself. So let's dive in and look at an example here. Okay, so here we have a song, and we're just going to listen to it quick and see if there's anything that we could do to maybe beef up the mix in terms of how things are sitting within the stereo field. So let's just listen here.
How do you feel? How do you feel? Break it down.
Cool, so the song's sounding great. Everything's pretty well mixed at this point, but I think there's a little bit of work we can do on our stereo field mixing. And specifically what I'm going to look at is our synths here. So we have a couple things going on. Let me just look at the first part of our chorus. So this is what that's sounding like. So we'll hear that these two elements are playing a little bit at the same time. So we want to make sure that they're not. These sound pretty similar in the stereo field. And the way I'm going to triple check that is to use Ozone Imager 2. Now this is a free tool, very powerful, that you can use to decrease the width, increase the width of your elements, and you can visualize very clearly how these things are sitting in the stereo field. This is a bit of a better drawing than the one I had before, but this is what our stereo field looks like. So if we're looking at our lead synth here, we can see that this thing is panned to the right a bit. Maybe we want to give this a bit more space. You hear there's a lot of texture going on in the sound. Maybe we just want to give it a bit. Now let's listen to the other one that's playing at the same time. So again, we'll get another Ozone Imager here. We're just going to take a look to see. So this is coming up just pretty much up the middle here. And honestly, I'm okay with that for things like my lead sounds. Maybe I'll just add a tiny little bit of width. We don't want to get rid of its. Like this is totally changing the sound, for example. Maybe we just give it a little bit. So that's going a little to the left. We had the other one going to the right a little bit. So now these things are going to sit a little bit better together. Yeah, sorry, here they are, these two. Just add something like a little bit of reverb here to make it a little more wet. So now those things are sitting really well together. And we can listen to the rest of our synths. So let's just give it a listen here. So maybe I want to give this big stab here. This one here. Maybe I want to give that a bit more width too, just because that's coming right up the middle. I think we can add a bit more width to it. Let's try doing that. So we'll do. Oh, it seems to not be actually going up the middle at all. Let me just look again. Maybe I want to make it more up the middle. Yeah, I'll give it a little more width here. Turn it down a little bit, it's a little bit loud. Very cool. So now those synths are sitting very well with one another. I'm just going to listen to it one more time here. So now these two, again, these are like the main elements we have here, is our lead and the second lead. Because those are playing at the same time, they're making the call and response of our main chorus. So we can hear that they kind of have their own space now. This main lead here is very wide, and this one here is a little more on the mono side, coming right up the middle. And that's okay, because that's going to give us the punch that we need from it to really stand out. So again, when you're thinking about how these things work, it's very specific to your song, right? There's not just one blueprint you're going to use. So I've used this specific element. It was a little bit more mono before, and I liked how it was sitting in the mix. I liked that we could hear it very clearly. So I left it mono, I added a tiny bit of width, and then the backing element, which was playing at the same time, I gave that even more width so that it had the space that it needs to stand out, so that you can hear the separation between those two elements is the very key point. Making sure that we can decipher between the two, where we can hear them both and they're clear, but we can understand the difference about where they sit, and we can hear it clearly. Both of those things clearly at the same time is our main goal. So that is our main focus here. We'll listen one more time here, and we'll listen in context.
Break it down.
Listen one more time. A little bit more context.
Break it down.
Now those things are sitting so clearly in the rest of our mix. Our synths are very easy to distinguish against one another. We can hear where they all sit. I've already kind of done this with parts of our drum elements, like our hats, our claps. But we can hear now that our synths are very easy to distinguish, and so that we can have a clearer mix. We understand things how they should be understood, and our listener has a clear understanding and clear listening experience when they hear, what might be a little bit of, maybe some would say, too many things at once. But when you make the space you need for those things, when you have the call and response still working and you make the space you need, it'll be a much clearer mix. So I'm really hoping that you guys can use this tool here as a way to analyze your own songs, your client songs, and mix accordingly so that you can decipher and separate things as you need to. So thanks so much for listening, everyone. This has been a bit of a quicker video here, but I wanted to just look at one example here of knowing when to look for differences and how to separate things in terms of the stereo field. So I just looked at two synths here that were playing at a similar time, making sure we could hear them both while they're playing. And so we use the stereo field to manipulate where they sit, making sure we can hear them both at the same time. And that's, over time, is going to add a ton of clarity to your mixes. So when you're mixing, make sure not to forget using the stereo field as well as the frequency spectrum to find the space you need in your mix. So thanks so much for watching, everyone. This has been Aidan Wood Mix and Mastering here. If you have any requests for services, please email me at awmixandmastering@gmail.com. If you have any questions about this video here or any parts of my process, please drop a comment below and I'll be sure to get back to you. And yeah, I hope to see you guys in the next video. Peace.